The stars had always been a dream for humanity. For 800 years, they had reached outward, building colonies on distant worlds, making friends with alien species, and creating a future among the stars. By the year 2847, humans lived on 17 different worlds. They had ships that could cross the galaxy. They had hope. Commander Daniel Harris stood on the bridge of the battleship Endurance and watched that hope die. The alarms had started screaming 3 hours ago. Now Daniel stood in silence, his hands gripping the railing, his eyes fixed on the view screen. What he saw made his blood turn cold. 3,000 Raxian warships filled the space around Earth. They had appeared from slipspace without warning, surrounding humanity's homeworld like wolves circling wounded prey. Their ships were massive, dark, and covered with weapons. Each one was twice the size of any human vessel. The combined human fleet numbered only 400 ships. "Commander," said Lieutenant Maria Santos, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Admiral Cole is ordering all ships to form a defensive line." Daniel nodded slowly. He knew what this meant. They were going to fight. They were going to lose. But they would not surrender without a battle. The Vraxian Dominion was known throughout the galaxy. They had conquered over 200 species across thousands of years. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They arrived, they destroyed, and they ruled. No species had ever successfully resisted them. Now they had come for humanity. The first Vraxian weapons fire lit up the darkness of space. Daniel watched as 3 human ships exploded in the distance, their crews dying in seconds. He gave the order to return fire. The battle lasted 6 hours. Daniel fought with everything he had. The Endurance destroyed 11 enemy ships before taking critical damage. Around him, the human fleet was being torn apart. Brave men and women died by the thousands, their ships breaking into pieces, their bodies floating in the cold void. When the shooting finally stopped, the human fleet was finished. Of 400 ships, only 60 remained, and most of those were badly damaged. The Endurance drifted without power, fires burning on multiple decks. Half the crew dead or wounded. Maria Santos sat on the floor of the bridge, blood running down her face from a deep cut on her forehead. She was alive. So was Daniel. Somehow, they had survived, but Earth had not. Through the cracked view screen, Daniel could see his homeworld burning. The Vraxians had bombed every major city. New York, Beijing, London, Mumbai, Cairo. They were all in flames. Billions of people were dying while he watched, helpless to stop it. A transmission came through on all frequencies. The face of the Vraxian High Commander appeared on every working screen. His name was Kethvorin. He was tall, insectoid, with 4 arms and eyes that showed no emotion. His voice was cold and harsh. "Humans," Kethvorin said, "your resistance has failed. Your fleet is destroyed. Your cities burn. You have one choice remaining. Surrender unconditionally, or we will continue until every human in the galaxy is dead. You have 1 hour to decide." The transmission ended. Daniel looked at Maria. She looked back at him. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say. 1 hour later, Admiral Patricia Cole broadcast humanity's surrender. She was an old woman, gray-haired and proud, but her voice broke as she spoke the words. Daniel had served under her for 15 years. He had never seen her cry before. She was crying now. The Vraxians landed their troops within days. They came by the millions, spreading across Earth and every human colony. They rounded up military personnel and took their weapons. They arrested government leaders. They shut down factories and schools. They took control of everything. Daniel was captured along with the surviving crew of the Endurance. He was placed in a processing center that had once been a sports stadium in Chicago. Thousands of humans sat in the seats, waiting to learn their fate. The Vraxian guards walked among them, tall and terrifying. They carried weapons that could kill a human with a single shot. They looked at their prisoners with something that might have been disgust, or perhaps just boredom. To them, humans were nothing special. Just another conquered species. Just another world to add to their empire. Kethvorin himself came to address the prisoners. He stood on a platform in the center of the field, his forearms crossed, his dark eyes scanning the crowd. "You fought bravely," he said. "It did not matter. No species has ever defeated the Dominion. Your resistance was pointless from the beginning. Accept your place now. Serve us faithfully, and you will be allowed to live. Resist, and you will be destroyed. This is your only warning." He turned and walked away. The guards began processing prisoners, separating them into groups. Military personnel in one group, civilians in another, scientists in a third. Families were torn apart. Children screamed for their parents. Parents screamed for their children. Daniel was placed in a group of former officers. They were told they would be sent to a labor camp on the moon. They would spend the rest of their lives mining minerals for the Dominion. As the guards led him toward a transport ship, Daniel passed Maria Santos. She was in a different group, headed for a different camp. Their eyes met for just a moment. In that moment, something passed between them. Not words. Something deeper. A promise. A determination. A refusal to accept that this was the end. The guards pushed Daniel forward. He lost sight of Maria in the crowd, but he did not forget that look in her eyes. That night, in the cargo hold of a transport ship headed for the moon, Daniel Harris sat in the darkness and made a vow. The Vraxians believed they had won. They believed humanity was broken. They believed the war was over. They were wrong. Daniel did not know how long it would take. He did not know how many would have to die. He did not know if he would live to see the end. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Humanity would rise again. And when they did, the Vraxians would learn the truth. They had not conquered humanity. They had only made humanity angry. That was a mistake they would regret. 5 years passed under Vraxian rule. On the surface, humanity appeared completely broken. Humans worked in labor camps across Earth and the colonies. They mined minerals, built machines, and served their new masters without complaint. Human children attended Vraxian education centers where they learned that the Dominion was great and resistance was foolish. Human leaders appeared on broadcasts praising the Vraxians for bringing order to their chaotic species. The Vraxians believed they had succeeded. Kethvorin himself returned to the Dominion homeworld to receive honors for his quick victory. Garrison forces were reduced. The best Vraxian soldiers were sent to other conquest fronts. Earth was considered a settled matter. They saw only what they wanted to see. Deep beneath the ruins of Denver, in tunnels that had once been part of an underground transit system, Daniel Harris was building an army. He had escaped from the lunar labor camp in the second year of occupation. It had cost the lives of 30 good people to get him out. He honored their sacrifice by never resting. Now he was known only as the Ghost. He moved through the shadows, traveling from city to city, colony to colony, finding others who refused to surrender. Former soldiers, engineers, scientists, factory workers, teachers, anyone willing to fight. They trained in secret. They gathered weapons one piece at a time. They built hidden bunkers and secret communication networks. They waited for the right moment. Daniel was not alone in this work. Maria Santos had allowed herself to be captured and sent to a labor camp in what had once been Germany. This was not defeat. This was strategy. Over 3 years, she had quietly turned 2,000 prisoners into a disciplined fighting force. They trained at night, in the brief hours when guards slept. They learned to fight with bare hands, They learned to make weapons from mining tools. They learned to move silently, communicate without speaking, and follow orders without question. The Vraxian guards noticed nothing. The prisoners appeared obedient and broken. They worked hard during the day and slept at night. What happened in the darkness between those hours remained invisible in a hidden laboratory beneath an old farmhouse in Kansas. Dr. Catherine Webb worked on a different kind of weapon. She was a physicist who had once designed engines for starships. Now she designed something far more important. She was reverse engineering captured Vraxian technology. Every piece of equipment the Resistance could steal found its way to her lab. Shield generators, weapon systems, communication devices. Catherine took them apart, studied them, and learned their secrets. Her greatest discovery came in the 4th year. She found a flaw in the Vraxian shield technology. A specific frequency, broadcast at the right wavelength, would cause their shields to fail. Not permanently, just for 47 seconds. But in battle, 47 seconds could change everything. On the colony world of New Houston, a teenage boy named Christopher Lane watched Vraxian soldiers execute his parents. His crime was hiding a collection of old books that the Dominion had banned. Books about human history. Books about freedom. Books about resistance. That night, Christopher stole a Vraxian patrol craft from the landing field outside his town. He was only 14 years old, but he had learned to fly by watching the guards. He flew the stolen ship across the continent to a resistance cell he'd heard rumors about. When he arrived, the resistance fighters did not know what to do with him. He was too young to be a soldier, but he could fly better than anyone they had. Within 2 years, Christopher became the youngest pilot in the hidden human fleet. The fleet itself was being built in secret. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, humans had established hidden shipyards. They worked in the darkness of space, far from Vraxian patrols, constructing warships from salvaged materials and stolen technology. By the 5th year, they had 300 vessels. Small compared to the Vraxian armada, but enough to make a difference. Perhaps the most important member of the Resistance was Admiral Patricia Cole. To the galaxy, she appeared to be a collaborator. She attended diplomatic dinners with Vraxian commanders. She gave speeches praising the Dominion. She smiled at her conquerors and told them how grateful humanity was for their guidance. It was all a lie. Patricia Cole was the highest-placed spy in the Resistance. Every dinner gave her information about fleet positions. Every meeting revealed security codes. Every smile hid a mind that remembered everything and forgot nothing. She passed her intelligence to Daniel through a network of secret messengers. She was playing the most dangerous game of all, and she knew the penalty for failure was death. She did not care. She had watched Earth burn. She would do anything to see it free again. The Vraxians remained blind to all of this. They had conquered 200 species. Every single one had broken under their rule. Every single one had accepted their fate. They expected humans to be the same. They did not understand that humans were different. Humans did not accept fate. They changed it. In the 6th year, the pieces began coming together. Daniel had his army. Maria had her soldiers. Catherine had her weapon. Christopher had his fleet. Patricia had her intelligence. All they needed now was a plan. Daniel called a secret meeting in the caverns beneath Denver. Representatives from every continent, every colony, every resistance cell attended through encrypted communications. For the first time in 6 years, humanity spoke with one voice. The plan was simple. They would strike everywhere at once. Every occupied world. Every Vraxian installation. Every ship in orbit. One coordinated attack spanning 17 star systems. It seemed impossible. That was why it would work. The Vraxians would never expect it. They believed humanity was broken. They believed resistance was dead. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The date was set. April 17th, the 7th anniversary of Earth's surrender. The day the Dominion celebrated their victory would become the day they learned to fear. The cavern beneath Denver was cold and dark. Water dripped from the ceiling. The air smelled of rock and rust. But to Daniel Harris, it was the most beautiful place in the galaxy. 200 people sat in the dim light, their faces lit by the glow of communication screens. Each one represented thousands more: soldiers, scientists, pilots, spies, workers, ordinary people who had chosen to become something extraordinary. Daniel stood before them and felt the weight of history on his shoulders. 7 years ago, he said, the Raxians came to our home. They burned our cities. They killed our people. They told us our resistance was pointless. They told us we would never be free again. He paused and looked at the faces around him. They were wrong. The room was silent. Every eye was fixed on him. In 3 weeks, we will show them how wrong they were. On April 17th, the anniversary of our surrender, we will rise. Every world, every colony, every ship, one attack, one moment, one chance. Dr. Catherine Webb stepped forward. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but her voice was strong. I have developed a weapon, she said. A signal that disrupts Raxian shield technology. When we broadcast this signal, their shields will fail for exactly 47 seconds. Their ships will be defenseless. Their ground forces will lose their personal barriers. For 47 seconds, they will be just as vulnerable as we are. A murmur went through the crowd. 47 seconds did not sound like much. But against enemies who had seemed invincible for 7 years, it was everything. Maria Santos spoke next. Her voice came through a communication screen from the labor camp in Germany, where she still remained hidden among the prisoners. My soldiers are ready, she said. 2,000 trained fighters. When the signal comes, we will take the camp. Then we will march on the nearest city. Other groups will do the same across every continent. We will hit them everywhere at once. Christopher Lane appeared on another screen, broadcasting from the hidden fleet in the asteroid belt. He was only 21 years old, but his eyes carried the weight of someone much older. The fleet is ready, he said. 300 ships. We have trained for this moment for years. When Dr. Webb sends the signal, we will attack the Raxian forces in orbit. We will not stop until they are destroyed. Finally, Admiral Patricia Cole appeared. Her image came from inside Raxian headquarters itself, transmitted through a hidden device in her personal quarters. I have the security codes for their communication network, she said. When the attack begins, I will disable their ability to coordinate. Their commanders will not be able to speak to each other. Their ships will not receive orders. They will be blind and confused. Daniel nodded slowly. The plan was complete. Now came the hard part. There is something you all must understand, he said. Many of us will die. Perhaps most of us. The Raxians still outnumber us. They still have more weapons, more ships, more soldiers. Victory is not guaranteed. He looked around the room, meeting every eye. But defeat is also not guaranteed. For 7 years, they have believed we were beaten. For 7 years, we have prepared in secret. For 7 years, we have waited for this moment. Now the moment has arrived. Whatever happens on April 17th, the galaxy will know that humanity never stopped fighting. They will know that we never surrendered. They will know what we are capable of. The room erupted in cheers. 7 years of fear and pain and hiding in darkness came pouring out in that moment. People who had lost everything found hope again. People who had forgotten how to smile remembered in the days that followed. The final preparations began. Samuel Grant was a factory foreman in what had once been Detroit. For 6 years, his factory had produced farming equipment for the Vraxians. But hidden within that farming equipment were weapons. Every plow blade was designed to become a sword. Every engine could be converted into a bomb. Every tractor was actually an armored vehicle in 72 hours. Samuel and his workers produced enough weapons to arm 300,000 fighters. They worked without sleep, driven by the knowledge that freedom was finally within reach. Catherine Webb transmitted the shield disruption frequency to every ship in the hidden fleet. She sent copies to resistance cells on every world. She tested and retested her equipment until she was certain it would work. Daniel Harris recorded a message. It would be broadcast at the moment of attack, sent to every human across 17 star systems. He chose his words carefully. This message might be the last thing many of his people ever heard. He wanted it to matter. On April 16th, Keth Voren returned to Earth. The Vraxian High Commander came to celebrate the 7th anniversary of what he called the pacification of humanity. He would hold a ceremony. He would give speeches. He would remind humans of their place in the Dominion. He did not know that he was walking into a trap. That night, Maria Santos gathered her soldiers in the darkness of the labor camp. 2,000 men and women stood in silence, their faces hard with determination. Tomorrow, Maria said, we will be free or we will be dead. There is no middle ground. If any of you wish to stay behind, I will not blame you. This is your choice. No one moved. No one spoke. Every single person remained standing. Maria felt tears forming in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Then rest now, she said. Tomorrow we remind the galaxy what humans are made of. Across 17 star systems, the same scene played out. In hidden bases and secret bunkers, in prison camps and underground tunnels, humans prepared for the fight of their lives. The night was long, but the dawn was coming. And with the dawn would come fire. April 17th began like any other day under Vraxian rule. The sun rose over a conquered Earth. Humans went to their labor assignments. Vraxian soldiers patrolled the streets. The occupation continued, as it had for 7 years. At the main plaza in what had once been Geneva, Keth Voren prepared to address his subjects. Thousands of humans had been forced to attend the anniversary ceremony. They stood in neat rows, their heads bowed, their spirits apparently crushed. Vraxian officers sat on a raised platform, looking down at the crowd with satisfaction. 7 years of peace. 7 years of obedience. Another successful conquest for the Dominion. Keth Voren stepped forward to speak. His forearms spread wide in a gesture of authority. Humans, he began, on this day 7 years ago, you learned an important truth. Resistance against the Dominion is not merely pointless. It is impossible. You were wise to surrender. You have been wise to obey. Under our guidance, your species will serve a greater purpose than you could ever have achieved alone. In the crowd, a young woman checked her hidden communication device. The time was 13:58. 2 minutes remained. Keth Voren continued his speech. He spoke of Vraxian greatness. He spoke of human weakness. He spoke of a future of eternal service. He did not notice that some members of the crowd were no longer bowing their heads. He did not see the hard looks in their eyes. He did not feel the change in the air. At exactly 14 o'clock, every screen on Earth flickered. Every speaker crackled. Every communication device came alive with a new signal. Daniel Harris appeared on every display. His face was older now, lined with 7 years of struggle. But his eyes burned with fire. 7 years ago, Daniel said, you broke our cities. You broke our fleets. You thought you broke our spirit. You were wrong. Today, humanity reminds the galaxy what we are capable of. Today, we rise. Catherine Webb pressed a button in her hidden laboratory. The signal went out. In orbit above Earth, the Vraxian fleet suddenly lost power. Their shields flickered and died. Their weapons went offline. For 47 seconds, they hung in space like helpless targets. Christopher Lane led 300 human warships out of hiding. They had been waiting in the shadow of the moon, engines cold, invisible to sensors. Now they came screaming toward the enemy at full speed. "All ships," Christopher said, his voice calm and cold. "Fire at will." Human weapons tore into the defenseless Vraxian vessels. Ships exploded. Debris filled the space around Earth. Vraxian commanders scrambled to restore power. But by the time their shields came back online, half their fleet was already destroyed. On the ground, chaos erupted. Maria Santos led her soldiers out of the labor camp in Germany. The guards never saw them coming. 7 years of silent training had turned 2,000 prisoners into the most disciplined fighting force on Earth. They moved like shadows, striking fast and hard, taking weapons from fallen guards and pushing forward. In Geneva, the anniversary ceremony became a battlefield. Hidden resistance fighters in the crowd pulled weapons from beneath their clothes. Vraxian officers fell from the platform, shot before they could react. Cathvorn himself barely escaped, dragged away by his personal guards as bullets flew past his head. In Chicago, Daniel Harris led a direct assault on the Vraxian Planetary Command Center. The building was heavily defended. They lost half their fighters in the first 10 minutes. Daniel did not stop. He could not stop. Everything they had worked for depended on taking that building. A Vraxian soldier appeared in front of him. Daniel shot him without hesitation. Another came from the side. Daniel's second in command, a former Marine named Lisa Park, took that one down. They pushed forward, room by room, floor by floor, leaving death behind them. In Vraxian headquarters in Geneva, Patricia Cole walked calmly through the corridors. The attack had begun. Now she had to complete her part of the mission. She reached the main communication hub and entered her security codes. The doors opened. Inside, Vraxian technicians worked frantically to restore contact with their fleet. Patricia pulled a small device from her pocket. She placed it on the main console and pressed a button. Every communication line in the building went dead. The technicians turned to look at her. They understood what had happened. One of them reached for a weapon. Patricia drew her own gun and shot him. Then she shot the others. When more guards came through the door, she knew her time was over. There were too many of them. She could not escape, but she could still fight. She pulled out a second device. A bomb. She had carried it for 3 years, waiting for this moment. The guards raised their weapons. Patricia smiled at them. "Long live humanity," she said. The explosion destroyed the entire communication hub. Patricia Cole died instantly. So did every Vraxian in the room. The Dominion's ability to coordinate their forces on Earth died with them. In orbit, the battle continued. Christopher Lane flew his fighter through fields of debris, shooting down enemy vessels with deadly accuracy. He had waited 7 years for this. He had trained every day. He had dreamed of this moment every night. A large Vraxian shuttle attempted to escape the battle. Christopher recognized the markings on its hull. This was a command vessel. Someone important was on board. He checked his scanners. The shuttle's identification came back. Personal transport of High Commander Cathvorn. Christopher felt his heart pound in his chest. This was the creature who had ordered the conquest of Earth. This was the one who had killed billions. This was the one whose soldiers had executed his parents when he was 14 years old. He opened a communication channel. "Cathvorn," Christopher said. "You killed my parents when I was 14. I have been waiting 7 years for this moment." The shuttle tried to run. It was not fast enough. Christopher fired every weapon his ship carried. The shuttle exploded in a ball of fire. Kefauren, the conqueror of humanity, died screaming in the void of space. Across 17 star systems, the same battle raged. Humans who had been slaves yesterday became warriors today. Ships that had been mining vessels became weapons of war. A species that had been conquered refused to stay conquered. By sunset on Earth, the Vraxian occupation was finished. They had not been defeated. They had been destroyed. The Battle of Liberation lasted 72 hours. When the last Vraxian gun fell silent, humanity stood victorious on 17 worlds. The cost was terrible. 100,000 humans had died in the fighting. Cities lay in ruins. Ships floated as wreckage in orbit. Families mourned their lost loved ones. The price of freedom had been paid in blood. Maria Santos lay in a medical tent in Geneva, her body wrapped in bandages. She had led the final assault on Vraxian headquarters, fighting hand-to-hand with enemy soldiers until a grenade blast threw her through a wall. Daniel Harris had carried her out of the burning building himself, refusing to leave her behind. The doctors said she would live. She would carry scars for the rest of her life. But she would live. Daniel sat beside her bed as she slept. He had not slept himself in 3 days. He could not. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of those who had died. Patricia Cole, Lisa Park, thousands of others whose names he would never forget. Patricia's sacrifice had changed the battle. Without their communications, the Vraxian forces had fallen into confusion. Units could not coordinate. Commanders could not give orders. By the time they restored contact, it was too late. The humans had already won. Daniel had found Patricia's remains in the ruins of the communication hub. There was not much left to bury, but he made sure she received a hero's funeral with full military honors and a flag draped over her empty coffin. Christopher Lane landed his damaged fighter on the broken streets of New York City. He climbed out of the cockpit and stood on the ground of his homeworld. For the first time since he was 14 years old. He was 21 now. He had just commanded the largest space battle in human history. He had killed the creature responsible for his parents' death. He should have felt victorious. Instead, he felt empty. He sat down on a piece of rubble and buried his face in his hands. The tears came then, 7 years of grief and rage and loneliness pouring out in the quiet of a ruined city. A young woman in a resistance uniform sat down beside him. She said nothing. She just put her arm around his shoulders and let him cry. Dr. Catherine Webb walked through the remains of her laboratory. The battle had damaged the farmhouse above it, but the underground rooms were intact. Her equipment still worked. The signal that had brought down Vraxian shields still functioned. She began making copies. If the Dominion ever returned, humanity would be ready. 1 week after the liberation, Daniel Harris broadcast a message to the galaxy. Not just to human colonies. To every species, every world, every civilization that might be listening. He stood in the studio that had once belonged to a Vraxian propaganda office. Now it served a different purpose. Behind him, the flag of Earth hung on the wall. Before him, a camera transmitted his image across the stars. "My name is Daniel Harris," he said. "I speak to you as a representative of humanity." He paused, gathering his thoughts. 7 years ago, the Vraxian Dominion came to our world. They believed that conquest was permanent. They believed that broken spirits stay broken. They believed that once a species surrenders, it surrenders forever. His voice grew stronger. They forgot what humans are capable of. We do not accept defeat. We do not stay down. We do not forget, and we do not forgive. He looked directly into the camera. To the Dominion, do not return. You have seen what we can do when we are angry. You do not want to see what we can do when we are prepared. His expression softened slightly. To every other species in this galaxy who suffers under Vraxian rule, you are not alone. If you have the courage to fight, humanity will stand with you. We were slaves once. We understand what it means to be conquered, and we will never allow another species to face that fate alone. He straightened his shoulders. This is not the end of our story. This is the beginning. The transmission ended. 3 days later, it reached the Vraxian homeworld. The Dominion Council watched it in silence. For the first time in their 1,000-year history, they felt something unfamiliar. Fear that they had conquered 200 species. None had ever fought back like this. None had ever won. None had ever sent a message promising to help others do the same. The galaxy was changing, and the Vraxians knew they were no longer the only power that mattered. In the ruins of Chicago, Maria Santos stood beside Daniel Harris. Her arm was in a sling. Her face was bruised, but she was standing. Behind them, survivors were already rebuilding. Construction crews cleared rubble from streets. Engineers restored power to damaged buildings. Children played in the ruins, their laughter echoing off broken walls. Someone was singing an old song about freedom. Maria looked at Daniel. What happens now? Daniel watched a group of human soldiers helping a wounded Vraxian prisoner to a medical tent. The prisoner had fought against them. He had been their enemy. But he was injured, and the soldiers were gentle as they carried him. Even now. Even after everything. Humans chose mercy when they could. Now, Daniel said, we show the galaxy who we really are. Maria smiled. It was a tired smile, full of pain and loss. But it was also full of hope. And who are we? She asked. Daniel looked up at the sky. Somewhere beyond those clouds, his fleet was patrolling. Somewhere beyond the stars, other species were watching. Somewhere in the galaxy, the Dominion was afraid. We are human, he said. We get knocked down. We get back up. And we never, ever give up. Maria leaned against his shoulder. The sun was setting over a free Earth. Tomorrow there would be work to do. Wounds to heal. Worlds to rebuild. All eyes to find. But tonight, they could rest. Tonight, they could remember those who had died. Tonight, they could be grateful for those who had survived. Tonight, humanity was free, and the galaxy would never forget what they had done.